Good afternoon. My name is Frank O'Connor. I'm supposedly an artist of some kind. Most of what I do revolves around not being perfect. Like, for instance, awesome drawing is not my thing. I can't draw particularly well. I don't do anything particularly well. So when I was initially studying art, one of my teachers said I don't have to draw at all, so I immediately got into, I guess we call it stain painting, poured painting, things like that. But just prior to that, I was an engineer. I was in college for aerospace engineering, and I was having a bad time, so I started doing hard-edge abstract paintings, not knowing the secondary thing is, I never had an art course in my life till second year of college. So it was kind of like, I didn't know anything. So in any case, about that time, my idea of art was, you know, those celebrities, Rembrandt, Michelangelo. I was sort of aware of Victor Vasarely, kind of optical illusion paintings. So I was able to draw some paint hard edge paintings. And eventually I did a couple that, well, one in particular that was pretty much based on Vasarely, kind of squares with little shapes inside, but kind of flat, not really what he was doing, but a variation on it. And that was kind of the start of my square paintings. But I was doing everything all along. Like I said, this one painting teacher of mine, John Mooney, said I didn't really have to do that. So at the same time, I was doing 12 feet by 8 feet stain paintings. And I got doing that, but I was also doing squares at the same time. I went to North Carolina, got a master's MFA in painting, and they were also squares. I did, well, exclusively squares. One series was called six permutations of vertical groupings of blue, green, and brown, which was a takeoff on a landscape with kind of vertical sections. And a couple brown and green, two verticals, about life size 6 feet by 2 feet. And these were just abstract paintings, but I had gotten into the square things, and after a while, well, I wasn't sure what to do with my life. Not much of a go-getter, as it were, and I can't even get a job. So like, at one point, I guess I went back to school to get a master's degree in art history also, which was, I did really well because I actually tried for the first time in a long time. And then I went to a PhD program, which I didn't like at all. We just did not hit it off. And I kind of ignored it and kind of stopped painting for a while. But shortly after that, I got a computer science degree, and I did what's called computer-aided design course, which is drawing on a computer. And I learned how to do that. And this was probably 1985-ish. And I started doing digital things on a computer, like drawings. And I actually got a job as a civil engineer for New York State. And I was able to do further drawings on the computer, and I learned how to do other things and got into Photoshop a little. And I was able to branch out on what I could already do and do more things. And we got into doing things called computer visualization, which is drawing construction projects before they're built. And we were good at that, myself and my partner and our boss. And eventually, it became obvious that if I could build a highway on a random picture, I could do virtually anything I wanted to, like in Photoshop. But I didn't want to get involved in the way of technical proficiency, but I was able to do things that not many other people had done. One of the first random things was like a Bosch type thing. I would draw different geometric shapes and shade them. The software had what's called a of ray tracing software. I was able to build exotic 3D environments. Now, the interesting thing about that to me was it literally was a paradigm shift for engineering. Like the old surveying and stuff was now done by computers. Everything was computerized. So I was literally recreating engineering, and then kind of took it off on a tangent into what might be called art, making pictures of various kinds. And I did that. And it's always, as you got into photos, there was two different softwares. One was like an engineering software, and then there was Photoshop. And they get kind of blended. I would draw the engineering picture, get it like 90%, and then transfer it to Photoshop and fine-tune it. And the Photoshop would become obvious as you grew up, the little pixel squares. And that correlated to the paintings I'd been doing all along, the little squares. So by little squares, besides being little squares, analogized to the pixels of a computer image. And my computer images really were a combination of painting and the pixels. A secondary concern was I was doing, initially painting, backtracking, there's like 3 different stories to my life. I was really into like formal painting, like Frank Stella, Kenneth Nolan, and things like that. And readings by Michael Fried and Clement Greenberg. They're talking about the end of painting, painting's dead, and flat painting, and all this stuff. And it was fascinating to me because it worked out well for what I did. On the other hand, it seemed ludicrous at the same time that they were serious. So what I've done is kind of continue that with a tongue-in-cheek mode. I'm still doing 70s flatness, but in my own way. Like for instance, Frank Stella didn't want to use color because it obviously had any number of meanings. So I like the fact that color has meanings, which is my North Carolina paintings with the brown, blue, green. They were vertical, so they disrupted the easy reading this landscape. Now, just to jump a little ahead, after I left North Carolina, well, actually some of my North Carolina paintings, or actually all of them, except 2 had little triangles within them. So they're squares with triangles, like the most simple drawing you can make. So they're hard edge squares with triangles. But after I left North Carolina, I decided to take even the drawing out, so they became squares. And actually this, on the back of this one book, this little green part of the bottom is one of my drawings from just after North Carolina. They're just, it's about chessboard size. I did 2 of those, and one of my drawings in North Carolina was 8 feet by 40 inches of just 2-inch squares. So I guess those were the first pure squares that I did without drawing it inside them. And then, obviously looking for something to do, I accidentally created this series called the Chameleon Series, which in essence are identical paintings with different colors. So the green one I just showed you, there's a companion that's red. That was kind of an initial one. But then right after I did 2 paintings, 42 inches and 2 at 42 and 2 at 36, so were just squares. So they were 2 pairs of a chameleon. And along the way, which doesn't really quite bring us here, but this is the same idea. This is a Chameleon Series group, 4 out of 5. The paintings are actually the same painting with different colors, which the colors actually don't really mean anything at all. But the sequence, as part of my engineering background, there's a clear sequence of designs from 1-inch squares to double to 2, 1 to 2 to 4 to 8. And each individual one is 16. And if you butted them together, it would be 32. And in a roundabout way, I'm communicating in a way that in a more concrete way than most art is meant to communicate in an abstract way where there could be several or multiple or infinite meanings. This, in one sense, has that one meaning that's just pretty direct without any variation. I mean, the color's a separate subtext, you would say. They're the same, but they're different. So there's two different things going on. There's also, I did a couple other series. There's actually like 6, I think, of these. One I'd like to mention, I was in Ireland doing graduate study 15 years ago. And abstract art is not welcomed in Ireland at all. It's very jokingly written off. Then they had a bunch of series of international exhibitions called ROSC, R-O-S-C. They brought over major art from around the world. And one thing I was studying is how naive Irish artists took this new information to try to make it their own. And one of the ways I was trying to access it was to do exactly the same thing. I created Chameleon Series. I think they were 1 foot square, but they're divided into 1/4 inch by 1/2 inch segments. The paintings were just like these, exactly the same. But what I was trying to do is invent North American Indian beadwork, Sioux beadwork. So I made beadwork paintings. Now, I imagine myself as a white American trying to think like a Sioux Indian. And I was doing the paintings, and I noticed, like in the very first one, the color was all wrong, like too much going on, like too decorative, like it needed to simplify. Then as I got to it further along, I would refine the painting. It was still exactly the same painting, but the coloration changed to get more in line with what a native person doing beadwork might be doing. And that the idea was that, so I misread the color, so the Irish person might read the intent of the color. The drawing, like, it's too complex, too simplified. You just try to, like, as a deconstruct what it was, like, creative process. And it was just an interesting thing, and I did a few, continued a little after, but then had to move on. And I'll just back up a little to finish up. Like I said, most of my work revolves around being an imperfect person. I've jokingly called myself mentally disturbed, autistic, whatever, immature. And I've written several books on that. There's a couple books. This is called Not Quite Poetry. This is one of my pieces with concrete, but on the back, you see these same squares from North Carolina and a square made out of painted rebar. Now, these are sort of poems, but the subtitle is Structured Prose, in other words. That means they might appear to be poetry, for instance, whatever that is. I can't see without my glasses. But it's structured, and some of them are really part of the poems, with all these essays broken down into like 14-line poetic segments that mimic squares at the back. They actually are meant to be squares, kind of like the paintings, but they're not really poetry. They're just words. I'm rambling on. And what that's partly about is I grew up Catholic and believe in God and all this stuff. And what these are is like a semester final exam. My wife is winding down. I'm writing my final presentation for God. Okay, here's who I am. What do you know, I got bad things going on. I got good things going on. Anyway, these are published at one time. There's 4 books, but 3 of the 4 are primarily about myself, my place in the world, and being defective, and explaining to God what I think has happened over the course of my lifetime. And so it's not real in one way, but to me it is real. And like I said, there's this one, there's a book, an autobiography book, and there's another book called Skiing for Leprechauns and Other Unique Individuals, which is divided into two parts. The initial part is I myself am a leprechaun, it's a unique individual, but the rest is devoted to this autistic kid from Toronto who I taught to ski, who can't do anything by himself, can't dress himself, feed himself, be left alone. I taught him to ski for like 10 years, and I published an article in a national magazine on him. Like I said, there's 4 chapters on him as a unique individual, and it extrapolates to like all kinds of others. There's a adaptive skiing program at Hallwalls, which he was a part of, and that's kind of an addendum, chapter 5. I guess I was going to finish, but I'm not quite finished. Now, these squares were translated into pixels. As I learned more about science, I got into more quantum mechanics type stuff called string theory, which is basically saying that what you call atoms aren't really ping pong balls at all. They're little, either rubber bands or closed, cut rubber bands wiggling about in various frequencies and doing whatever. And I do these branch things, and this is a sculpture I've got going right now that's been going on. It's called Synasteria Redux. The Synasteria is an arbitrary, term referencing these invasive species from outer space called actually Synasteria colorea, which is a takeoff on ordinary Latin names for plants. You know, Synasteria obviously comes from the Latin, first left-handed, but in the modern text, sinister. So you got these multicolored, supposedly sinister branches, but ironically, they're not sinister, they're friendly invasives. And the branches represent spring theory. They are the little strings blown up to a size where people can actually comprehend. But in reality, the theory, they're so small that we will never actually see them. But each color, just like the branches are colored, defined by the frequency, just as are the strings. And I call them invasives because where it's built in La Seneca, there's these things called phragmites. They're like 10 feet growths in the medians and stuff. And you cut down, they come right back. So I made invasive species and string theory all in one. And there's various other meanings which we don't need to get into. But anyway, this string theory, this pixelization are my ways of doing near art without, I guess, conceding the fact that in some sense I'm not really an artist. And just one last thing here. The defective thing partly revolves completely around the fact that I did not speak normally growing up. Like I probably didn't speak relatively normally until maybe 15 years ago. So my speech has determined my life, wrecked things. At one point I was doing a PhD in Binghamton. I gave one presentation, I couldn't even read the first sentence. I had interviews at both the Albright Knox and the Baltimore Museum of Art, and my speech pretty much dictated that that was not going to happen. So I retreated into myself, and I'm just biding my time, doing paintings here and there. And I'd like to think what I'm doing is worthwhile. Thank you.